And the reason why I'm an elected official today is because we need disability representation. The city of Denver has never had disability representation on Denver City Council before, or in elected office at any level, local, state, or federal. And to your point, our democracy is better if it's representative of all the people. So never having disability representation before I feel honored that the people of District 10 have been willing to elect me to office. I actually replaced an incumbent going for re-election, which is really tough here in Denver. So I'm honored that the people of District 10 were kind enough to give me the opportunity to represent.
Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast today. We have an incredible guest. I'm your host, Jonathan Mason, and joining me today is Chris Hinds. He is on the Denver City Council representing District 10, but he is more than that. He is somebody that has gone through life and then had to fight systemic discrimination. And I say this rarely, if I've ever said this. This is the first time I've ever had somebody on the podcast that has an act named after them or coined after them. So this is going to be a great one, guys. I really am excited for you to hear Chris's journey. So let's jump right into it. But before we do, Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. It's a beautiful day here in lovely Denver, Colorado. It's great day to be outside, and that's why a lot of people come to Colorado. But I'm really excited to be inside here with you to chat with you about Denver and all the things that we're doing here in our lovely city.
Well, I love that. And that leads me to my first question that I always ask. Outside of the fact that I heard it's supposed to be upwards of almost 90 degrees this week, what is the special sauce of Denver? What makes it the best place to live in the United States?
So I grew up in rural Texas, and Texas has a lot of pride. And I said, if I ever leave the great state of Texas, it will be for San Diego. I came to Denver for a 2-week project in January 2007. Got to leave, and so there are two reasons for my personal journey, but I think it resonates with a lot of people. Why I came and stayed in Denver. The first reason is I have a computer science degree, and there's a vibrant tech community here in Denver and the Denver metro area, including Boulder. And so the reason why I came is for a 2-week project for a socially conscious startup that was based out of Boulder, Colorado. And as startups do, it did not start up. And so, but even in the 2-week project that turned into a 3-month project, I discovered the rugged outdoor lifestyle here in Denver and Colorado. And so the reason why I came was for a tech startup. The reason why I stayed is there's so many beautiful things to see and experience, and to live in a community that has urban amenities, but be very adjacent to so many things that are here on our planet that connect us, that remind us that we are here for a limited period of time. We are small, very small relative to our planet. And so we have the great outdoors here. And we also have the ability to recognize how humans interact with the planet and vice versa. And a lot of that's shown here in Denver and then the lovely outdoors of Colorado.
Wow. Yes. And it is beautiful there. I can attest. I think I may have told you my wife is from the Fort Collins area. I have sisters-in-laws and brothers-in-laws that live in Denver currently, and it is beautiful. Just being able to see the mountains, get outside, really live the way that I feel like we were almost intended to be outside and enjoying nature. So I can definitely attest to that. Now, everyone's on the pins and needles on the edge of their seat. I've alluded to your background, but I always say this: you can learn so much about a city by who they elected or who they chose to be in leadership. So, give me a little bit of your early background. So, what was childhood like? I know you said growing up in rural Texas, and how did that play into now being an elected official? Did you always know you wanted to be in public service? What was that journey?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up really rural Texas, as in the closest neighbor was a half mile away, and it was a chicken farm. So Pilgrim's Pride hatchery, and most people can't claim that their closest neighbor was hundreds or maybe thousands of chickens, but that's the small town where as the county seat was called Nacogdoches. It's the oldest town in Texas. It's a Caddo Indian name, and specifically, it's the oldest continually inhabited settlement in Texas. So it definitely has roots to indigenous communities. Before white people like me came to America, there were people that were living off the land in Nacogdoches and in rural East Texas. So I grew up poor. Texas, you wouldn't think that people would not have air conditioning. We did not. We didn't have a TV, so I was okay. My mom's a hippie, and so my mom hitchhiked around the U.S. for a while, and she ultimately landed in Texas and met this gentleman who ended up being my dad. And so that's the reason why she stopped visiting our 50 states. But, so that also kind of, resonates with me, and the connection to the planet is, my mom was very interested in making sure that, that our interaction with the planet was top of mind. So we grew up very poor, and that really kind of, that was a lot of my formulation. You asked if I ever thought I would be an elected official. I mean, some of the things that I was thinking about was eating. My mom shielded me for a lot of that. And so I didn't really have to think about where's the next meal coming from. That's what my mom did. My parents divorced when I was 2, so that's why I don't really talk about my dad. So growing up in rural Texas, you only know what you know your experiences, and it gave me the opportunity really to interact, to really have the opportunity to talk more with people as opposed to learning things or events, which ultimately would be more helpful for me, as I considered being an elected official. But no, that wasn't in my mind at all. I ended up getting a scholarship for college in Dallas. I graduated from high school, and 6 days later, I moved from Nacogdoches to Dallas. As is the case with many small communities, there's a bit of a black hole. Like most people don't leave, and so I rebelled against my mom, as kids do, and so I got out right after graduating, and ended up going to Southern Methodist in Dallas. So I was a runner and a soccer player. I played sweeper, and in soccer, ran 5K in high school, 10K in college, 5K after college. This is important because part of the reason why, in the introduction, you talked about representation. And so, I was just a poor kid learning how to, interact with the planet and understand my own body and how I could push it to its athletic limits. I was also a scholarship kid. I graduated from the engineering school at SMU in Dallas. Went back to get an MBA, a master's in business administration from the Cox School of Business at SMU, and was working on climbing the corporate ladder. That's what a lot of college grads do. It's certainly what a lot of MBA folks do. As I said, I had this opportunity to do a 2-week project with actually one of my friends I trained with at SMU. He was on the team. I wasn't good enough to run for SMU. But so he asked me to come to Denver for this 2-week project. And I said, sure, why not? And as I said, I stayed. 2-week project turned into a 3-month project. And I learned that the planet is amazing in lots of different spots, not just Texas, but in Colorado, you can have access to urban amenities. You can also see these amazing snow-capped mountains. Maybe not as much right now because we're having historic drought here in Denver, Colorado, but most of the time we would have snow-capped mountains, and it's pretty awesome to live in a community where you can just look west and you can just see the immensity of Mother Nature and how much that we are really small as individuals. So anyway, I stayed in Denver, got a job in finance for a software company, computer science degree, MBA, and ended up using both degrees. And in 2008, the city of Denver hosted the Democratic National Convention. And so that was August 26th, 8. It's the last day I could walk. I was on a bike, got hit by a car. Someone was going the wrong way up 18th here in Denver. There are people from all over the world. I got rushed to the hospital, and spoiler alert, I'm alive. I did live, and that was in part thanks to the amazing doctors over at Denver Health here in Denver. The medical staff there said it was also in part because I was a pretty strong athlete and my body's in really good shape. And so I'm very fortunate to be here. I count every day that I'm alive as a blessing. And I now use a wheelchair to get around. You can't really see that here in the podcast, but August 26, 2008 was the day I joined the disability community. We are all temporarily abled, and I started learning. I went from being a runner and soccer player on 3 soccer teams to learning how to sit up in bed, learning how to move around. Actually, interestingly, sitting up in bed was an advanced skill. It wasn't until the 3rd month in rehab that I learned how to sit up in bed. And part of that was because I fractured 12 vertebrae in my back. And so I had this huge brace. And so while some other people were, maybe doing it a little sooner, that brace pretty much prevented me from doing a lot of learning how to live with my new body. And, I'd much rather have the opportunity for any of those vertebrae to heal and get function back. But didn't really get a whole lot of return, whatever. We are the sum of our own experiences. And I'm very fortunate to, like I said, I'm very fortunate to be here and alive today. I didn't know anything about wheelchairs, people with disabilities. I didn't know anything about, proper etiquette, about, the disability community, or, what do you do? Do you hold the door for someone in a wheelchair, or don't you? I didn't know any of that. And for those who maybe never thought to ask the same question, you're good. I mean, we can't know everything about everything. And it is only once we have those experiences that we start learning about, other things that are happening in our lovely planet. So I think that's important to share, that some people feel uncomfortable around me, not as much because I'm an elected official, but because they don't know what to ask or what to say or how to act. And so I'm going a little bit on a on a soliloquy here, but I hope you don't mind. The disability community has, I think, one overall principle, and it is the idea of nothing about us without us. So let's say you're planning a trip and you have someone with a disability along the trip, coming with you on the trip. Just ask, is there, how can we make your experiences as pleasant or as frictionless as possible? So if I try to do my best to tell people, hey, if you want to know something about my history, my past, or my present, please feel free to ask. I tell some jokes, some disability jokes, mostly to kind of break the ice. So here's an example. I haven't talked about how I joined council yet. So there's a little bit of a spoiler, but sometimes I talk about that I represent 75,000 constituents here in the city of Denver as an elected official. And the reason why I'm an elected official today is because we need disability representation. The city of Denver has never had a disability representation on Denver City Council before, or in elected office at any level, local, state, or federal. And to your point, our democracy is better if it's representative of all the people. So never having disability representation before I feel honored that the people of District 10 have been willing to elect me to office. I actually replaced an incumbent going for re-election, which is really tough here in Denver. So I'm honored that the people of District 10 were kind enough to give me the opportunity to represent. If we talk about barrier breakers, usually that's meant in a figurative sense. For me, it's literal. 2019, in July of 2019, when I was elected and then inaugurated, there was no access for people in wheelchairs to the city council. So, that was 29 years after ADA was passed, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's another kind of thing that I learned before my crash. I thought, ADA, you've got the federal attorneys out. They're going to get you if you don't think about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And now that I'm part of the disability community, I recognize that the ADA is only as strong as the people are willing to use it. So 29 years after ADA was passed, the city of Denver made physical alterations to the city council chambers, the people's chambers, because there was a step, or pretty large step, to prevent me from getting to my desk on council. So it wasn't because a law was passed, it was because someone was elected, because someone was representing the disability committee that change happened. Also, the city of Denver made changes to the restrooms in City Hall. One would think that the people with disabilities would have access to restrooms. Well, they do now, thanks to representation. So I feel, like I said, I feel very fortunate. Here's the disability joke that I was going to share with you a couple minutes ago. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, or at least most people can. I can't walk because I use a wheelchair to get around. But in the spirit of walking and chewing gum, I believe I can represent the disability community and the people of District 10 at the same time. So how do I do that? What does that mean? Find things that are issues that are of importance to everyone, both the disability community and the people of District 10. So District 10 is the center city district. So if you come visit our lovely city, it is the 16th Street Mall. It's where the convention center is. It's the art museum. The Botanic Gardens are in District 10. The 60% of our hotel rooms are downtown, and they're all in District 10. So if you come to our lovely city, likely you'll spend quite a bit of time in my district, just because that's where a lot of people want to work and play. I have 75,000 constituents who also live in this beautiful slice of our planet. I call it Denver's perfect 10. Just, again, of a little bit of a joke, it's 10 out of 10. We also happen to be District 10. We live in the real world. We don't live in Narnia, but it's a pretty darn good slice of our city. So one of the ways that I feel I represent both the disability community and the people of District 10 is by talking about alternatives to cars. I've got we have 9 neighborhoods that I represent. The people in Capitol Hill is one of my neighborhoods. A third of households in Cap Hill don't own cars at all. And Uptown, a third of households don't own cars at all. City Park West, 37% of households don't own cars at all. So a lot of the people who live in my district also believe in alternatives to cars. It's in part because they made an economic decision. Denver is a very exciting and lucrative place. It's got a great quality of life. And so people move from all around the country to live here sight unseen. And so it's expensive to live here because people want to come here. And it's the third most unaffordable housing for rent market in the United States, behind San Francisco and New York. So some people have made that transportation decision to get rid of their car because of an economic choice. Some of them make the decision because they care about the planet too, and physical health, and not only their impact on the planet, but their connection to the planet, as in being encased with thousands of pounds of metal and glass, like being in a car. You're just moving through our planet in a bubble, as opposed to being connected to the planet. So yeah, if we can have a broad and inviting pedestrian experience on our sidewalks, then those who've chosen to get rid of their cars for whatever reason can get down the sidewalk. If a person in a wheelchair can get down the sidewalk, and someone with a visual impairment can get down the sidewalk, then anyone can. And so that's the example of representing someone in District 10 and representing the disability community at the same time. And all those who have disabilities, who come from other, suburb cities or other states or other countries, they get to benefit from that broad and inviting pedestrian experience too. So we can have more visitors, and we can take their sales tax dollars and all those taxes that they pay when they stay in a hotel. We'll take I'm lucky that I make a living wage, and I travel too, fair amount to represent the city of Denver in other cities. And I want to give my sales tax dollars to other cities too. And so if other cities have a broad and inviting pedestrian experience, like what I'm trying to do for our center city, then we can take everyone's money. 1 in 4 Americans has a disability, and of any kind. So I'd rather set up Denver so that we can take 100% of people's money, as opposed to 75% of people's money. It's a little bit of a economic point, as opposed to making the socially conscious decision of we're a city. My salary personally, my office, every city employee are paid for by the people of Denver and all the people of Denver. And all the people of Denver should benefit from the decisions that I make and the designs that we create for our city. Certainly, there's the economic decision, like a sales tax revenue, but there's also a social decision, behind making a broad and inviting pedestrian experience. And as in everyone pays taxes, and everyone should get the benefit of what those taxes buy. I just realized I think I've been talking for 10 minutes uninterrupted. So I'm sorry that was a little more. I think it went a little beyond the question that you asked. I hope you don't mind, but yeah, please recenter me. Get me back into the interest of your listeners or
No,
viewers.
I do not think you left the interest of the viewers throughout that time. A couple things you said resonated with me. I put a mirror in my face and on a couple things, and we're aligned on so many different things. One of the things that you said that definitely hit me was we're all temporarily abled, whether that is physical, mental. You have what you have now, and that could shift at any moment. So I thought that was very powerful. And then nothing about us without us. I think the disabled community, that like almost motto or phrase or point of championship is so important on so many different fronts. But yeah, the mirror that I spoke of is like you asked, should you open up the door? And I didn't know. I would assume like I would for anybody, open up the door. But I guess I'll take your advice and ask, like, is that seen a certain way? Is that not proper? Because I legitimately do not know.
Yeah, and I would, so to that specifically, should you open the door or not? If you'd open the door for anyone else, I know that some people with disabilities, they say, I could have done my own door, but some able-bodied folks would say the same thing, right? Like, why are you doing that? I'm an independent person. So, but yeah, you could certainly, could ask if in doubt. I'd much rather someone ask than worry or wonder or fumble. Like, I don't know what to do, and then you get this analysis paralysis. Yeah, just ask. If I may, just to talk about nothing about us without us. There's an important extra component to that, as in I'm representing the disability community, and I want people to recognize my community. It is, I believe, my obligation to do that same thing that you just talked about, as in learning about my community. I believe it's my obligation to hear from as many different viewpoints as possible before making a decision. And that means, while you don't know my struggle, I don't know your struggle. And I don't know, the struggle is, your struggle as, regardless of who you are. I don't know the struggle of the Black community. I don't know the struggle of the community on the East Coast, because I've never lived there. And, so there are, I think, additional obligations. I believe I would be a hypocrite if I only talked about the disability community and did not actively seek out, additional knowledge and awareness of communities that are not mine. And that's tough, right? But I would say, other than growing up poor in rural Texas, I'm a middle-aged white male. And certainly in rural Texas, I didn't know anything about discrimination. And so August 26, 2008, suddenly August 26, 2008, I joined the disability community, and, we are ambassadors of our own kind, whether we like it or not. I'm a very visible ambassador to the disability community, as in, like, I can't hide the wheelchair. There are people with invisible disabilities who, maybe they don't want to share, and that's their prerogative, it's their life, or they still need support too at times. And so it's important for me to, even in my own community, listen and get a better sense of, other struggles. And I use the word struggle not as in, man, we're all struggling here, but as in we have are easy, and there are things that are not as easy. And so that's what I'm saying by struggle. I'm not trying to say that I'm barely struggling to get through life, or that other communities are, all those East Coasters are barely struggling because they're not here in lovely Denver, which actually might be true, but that's a joke. But yeah. So anyway, sorry, I realized I went down a long rabbit hole again.
No, you're totally fine. I'll remind you, this is a podcast, so long rabbit holes are more than accepted. And the one thing I do want to tease out that I brought up in the introduction. So a little birdie told me that there was a piece of legislation that was passed, and many refer to it as the Chris Hinds Act. Could you maybe speak to how that came about and what that piece of legislation is?
Sure. And this actually kind of goes back to your core question of, did I always want to be an elected official? So 2008, I joined the disability community. I was looking at I bought a condo in October 2011, condominium in central Denver, and 7 spaces designed, constructed, and maintained for people with disabilities. And so when I was looking at the building, I was like, oh, I'll just park there. When it came to, when I closed on the condo, I went down to those spaces that night, and it turns out there were, cars parked there without any sort of indication that they qualified for those spaces. I said, well, that's a weird thing. I guess it's a private lot. So I'll ask. So I asked the property management company the next day, and they said, oh, you can't park there. We've given those spaces away. Turns out to people regardless of disability, and said, I don't think that's right. So I went to my HOA, and they said, no. I went to the city of Denver, and I said, will you enforce those spaces, the law after all? And they said, no. I went to my council member at the time, and he said, this is a slam dunk. And 3 weeks later said no. So, this happened over time. And by the time it kind of got to that level, I was learning who the people are who are active in the disability community in Colorado. And I learned that the state was considering a bill changing the way parking for people with disabilities worked in the state. I ended up becoming the lead advocate on that bill. And it was really tough. We have 35 senators. It was an 18-17 vote in the Senate. Passed by one vote. All the Democrats voted for it. All the Republicans voted against it. Not to put partisan things in, it's just the way it was. But that ended up becoming law, and that was in 2014. And I said, "Wow, this is maybe one person can make a difference." Like, who knew that one person could actually, from rural Texas next to a whole bunch of chickens, could come to Denver, Colorado, and become an advocate and get a law passed. I said, hey, let's keep trying. And so as I worked on 5 or 6 other bills, and then in May of 2018, Governor Hickenlooper, the Colorado governor at the time, he's now our U.S. Senator, signed the Chris Hinds Act into law. I'm Chris Hinds. So it also was concerning parking for people with disabilities. So, I talked about access, and I talked about equality and equity. Like, we all deserve the ability to get from A to B safely, no matter how we choose to get there. We all deserve access to the mall, the grocery store, the restaurant, particularly even at 7 p.m. on Friday night when everyone else wants to go eat with friends and family. And so, yeah, there were several legislators that when the amendment was added to the bill, they actually literally changed the title of the bill to the Chris Hinds Act. So House Bill 18-1285, if you want to look it up. And so, but when they passed the amendment to change the title of the bill, there were legislators that said, this is someone who was affecting change in the right way, coming, sharing their voice, testifying. And so as a result of, that passage, I actually helped the state of Hawaii the next year. So 2 weeks after the press came out about the signing ceremony for the Chris Hinds Act, someone from the state of Hawaii called and he said, hey, we've been trying to get the same thing passed in Hawaii, but we can't get it done. And so I shared all my notes, shared, some of the responses to concerns that legislators had. And the next year, the state of Hawaii passed it. So they didn't name it after me, though. State of Hawaii deserved that law with my name on it, too. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I feel honored that the state of Colorado was willing to listen. I ended up getting, I think it was 69 sponsors. So they're in the state of Colorado, there's 65 members of the House of Representatives, 35 senators, and a sponsor is one that they're saying, I want to put my name in as as not just voting yes on the bill, but this has the weight of my office and my name personally attached to the bills. That alone is a supermajority of the legislators in the state of Colorado at the time. So um, it was very moving. And going back to your question about did I always want to be an elected official? No, I actually, as I said, I was thinking about climbing the corporate ladder. When I had my crash, I went from thinking, can I make this world a better place for me? That's what you do when you climb the corporate ladder. To can I make this world a better place? And when I got a law named after me, I was like, well, maybe I can. And if they're going to start naming laws after me as a private person, imagine what I could do as an elected official. And, a year later I got elected. So I didn't have to imagine anymore. And so going back to the idea of representation matters, breaking a barrier, but also one person can make a difference. One person who grew up around chickens can become a force at the national or international stage. So your viewers, your listeners, I'm sure one or two or more of them are thinking about doing the same thing. Do it. Do it. You can make a difference too.
I love that you showed how even before, like you said, even before you stepped into more of a career in public service, you were serving the public through representation and through pounding the pavement. You're not the first person, and I'm glad that you're not, that had something in them and wanted to see a change. And they worked, and it wasn't easy. It didn't just happen at the snap of the finger and change, but they really pounded the pavement, did what they needed to do to show the power of the democratic process in this country, and they came out on the other side. And I'm thinking of a state representative down in Georgia. She was pounding the pavement for lupus and lupus research and legislation around how that is treated. And similarly, she got it passed and then ran for us for state rep. So I love to see people that are called into duty. So thank you from all of the communities that I represent. Thank you for representing your community, both the disability community and the District 10 community. And on that note, I'd love to kind of get into some of the X's and O's. And you mentioned it earlier. I mean, anybody now probably knows this, but you said that I believe Denver is the third most expensive housing market behind what was it, San Francisco and New York. Could you kind of speak through what that actually means? Like what does the housing stock? Is it a lack of land? Like where is some of this kind of expense, or is it just the demand of people moving in?
Part of the challenge in Denver started in 2008. The global financial meltdown had construction permitted for buildings, apartments in Denver, and they all stopped. And by 2013, Colorado was recovering faster than the rest of the nation. And the economic recovery was way stronger here in our state. I think people started realizing that, do I really have to live where I am? Do I have to live in, this area of the country that doesn't resonate with me? Just because I grew up there, maybe I want to go somewhere else. And Colorado and Denver has very much been kind of a cow town and a flyover state. And so people really didn't think about coming to the city of Denver. And like I said, the rugged outdoor lifestyle is right there. If you want to, if you want to have access to water, ocean, lakes, that's not here. But not many places have access to world-class ski resorts where you can live in your house, go to a world-class ski resort for the day, and end up lay your head back down on your own pillow in your own house. Like taking a day trip to some of our ski resorts, totally possible. And you don't have to pay for the hotel or the expensive food that the ski resort provides, that's of sometimes good quality, sometimes not. So there's year-round access to outdoor activities here. A vibrant a vibrant job market. There are lots of jobs here. Several different industries. Part of the challenge is when 2013 happened, there were people leaving California, New York, and Chicago, and was pretty economical to live here, and people were fleeing San Francisco and New York, as you said, because that's what I said, is that those are the two even more expensive housing for rent markets, and we just didn't build housing fast enough, and the people were so excited to live here, and again, they were picking places sight unseen. They'd move from another state in my district into a apartment in Capitol Hill without even knowing anything about it, never laying eyes on the thing other than photos. So there was a bit of things happening at the same time. There's a meltdown that stopped all construction really. Then there was the recovery in Colorado was faster than the rest of the nation. There's the access to great things that people want to do outside of work, and they're great access to great jobs. And then there's also state legislation that makes it really difficult to build condominiums in the state of Colorado. Interestingly, I've served 6.5 years almost 7 years on council. And just in the last few months, we're actually starting to see our rental rates go down. I just saw an article earlier this week that the Denver metro area has the largest drop in rental rates of any major city in the nation, or any metro area in the nation. And so why did we get to where we are? Well, because we're behind the times. We were trying to play catch up as people were moving here because it's such a great place to live. And so we've been, there are a couple things you can do. You can build more housing. Classic economist says with more inventory, you can rent to more people. And there's just a natural flow of, if you build new housing, then someone will move into that new housing. Well, then where they lived won't be new, but it will become available. So someone will move into it, and wherever they came from, so it all just kind of the market as you put in new housing. And so, being the center city should take density. We've got a lot of 12-story large apartment buildings that have, gone up with hundreds of units each in District 10 in the last 7 years. But then there's also that not only should we listen to the classic economist that just says build more housing. In 2022, the city council, I was on council and I voted for this. We passed a piece of legislation called enhanced housing affordability. Before that, when someone built an apartment building or, in Denver, they had to pay what's called a impact fee. And that fee was really low, really low. We did an analysis and it was 20% the national average, as in we could increase it 500% and it would just be equal to the national average. In some ways, that was great for building housing, right? I mean, like if developers don't have to pay as much in Denver as another market, we get more profit in Denver's. So that's certainly good for the developer, theoretically good for the people of Denver. But in that legislation, we increased that impact fee 500% over a period of a few years. We also said you have to include affordable housing, and have to is a little bit asterisk to that because the state said we couldn't just say you have to. There has to be an option to not put in affordable housing. But the alternative, if you don't put in affordable housing, is to pay an even higher impact fee. So now we're seeing new apartment buildings that are getting permitted, that are getting the okay from the city to build, that have affordable housing built into the building. So I believe a diverse community is a healthy community. So rather than, I watched The Wire. Did you know President Obama's favorite series of all time is The Wire? The Wire is a bit of a view of housing decisions from decades ago. And so, they have the projects, and in The Wire in the city of Baltimore, they put all the affordable housing in one spot and all the crime would be right there. And, some of the characters in the show would say, well, they'll sort themselves out. I don't agree that that's the right answer. And, maybe it was a thought from, the 80s or 70s. I don't know. But for the people of Denver today, a diverse community is a healthy community is the right answer. And so if we have people who are market rate, they pay rent, just as one might expect. And then we have, a subset of people who can't pay market rate living in the same building. I think that's good. So who are these people who are getting these subsidized housing. Well, if we are the third most unaffordable city for rent in the country, these folks are our teachers, there are nurses, there are firefighters, and they just want to live in the city in which they work. Like, clearly they're doing it because they love the job, not because and they love the city, not because they're going to get rich. They're not going to get gobs of money being a nurse here and living and working in the city of Denver. But they should have access to housing, as they've chosen a profession that is to help all of us here in Denver and all the visitors too. So it's two things: the classic economist, build more and it'll sort itself out, but also social comment too, where we should have diverse, healthy communities. And we're starting to see some of those buildings happen where um, there was a groundbreaking ribbon cutting. Groundbreaking is when you start the construction. Ribbon cutting is when you finish the construction. There are five. There's a building a few blocks away from where I live. I live downtown, and five DPS school teachers got free rent for a year. Just these brand new units have made the news. We need to do more than that. I mean, more than just five school teachers in one building in a year. We need to make sure that everyone has a place, a roof over their head. And so I'm glad that the rental rates are finally going down. That helps everyone, but also having some units in new buildings that are for those who don't make as much as the standard worker. Actually, that's the average, what does it mean by affordable? They take the area median income, the average income for a worker, and it's the Denver metro area. It's not just the city of Denver. But they say that's 100% of the area median income. Well, we've got a lot of tech workers here. Tech workers make good money, and so that all those tech jobs, again, part of the reason why I came here, are skewing some of the results. So they're making good money, which is fine. They should have. If you do an honest day's work, you should get an honest day's wage. So anyway, I hope that answered your X or O question.
For sure. And then I have some follow-up questions there. That makes a ton of sense to me. There is a supply problem, but there are other ways to address the issue. And yes, mixed communities. And I'm gonna butcher this, but it was like the biggest determinant. And again, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I'm just gonna go with it anyway. The biggest determinant to your children's success is the amalgamation of the parents of their friends. And it's like, if you put your child around in a certain neighborhood and their parents' friends are doctors, lawyers, accountants, tech workers, so they get to see and get to be in that community, it brings an expectation or encouragement to certain things and certain jobs, and that could be the complete opposite if you put them in a room of people that aren't doing great things or don't have the same opportunities. They may cap their opportunities or do things that aren't necessarily the best things to do, even if they are a product of circumstance. So I love that you pushed that forward, because I believe that too. And one thing that you did, and I want to ask before we get to our last chance games, which are a little bit more fun, but you said based on state legislation, it is hard to build condominiums. Could you kind of walk through or just talk about, like, what is that mechanism and how that is kind of blocking that?
Sure. I want to I, I want to dig into something you just said a moment ago. Happy to answer the question.
Yeah.
Let's say you have $10 in your wallet. Well, I've got a credit card, but I don't really carry cash anymore. But let's say you have $10 in your wallet. You want to loan it to someone, or you want to give it to someone. Who are you going to give it to? Family? Friends? I mean, like, chances are you're going to give it to someone you know rather than someone you don't know. And like, there are times when you give it to someone you don't know, if someone on the street or someone who needs it. But what if you had $100? What if you had $1,000,000? What if you're a billionaire and you have $100 million? Someone's starting a company. Like, your friend's kid is starting up this company. Like, you know what? Whatever. I'll give him a shot. I'll give him $1,000,000. I've got I've got hundreds of millions of dollars. So, like, to your point about sometimes it's these social circles make people, because, like, how would I decide who I'm going to give my $10 to? Well, it's, probably the people I know first, than the people I don't know. So I think, to your point, that's kind of some of the reason why once you've made it, it's easier to make it. Anyway, condominium defect legislation in the 2000s, so the aughts, the decade of the aughts. Uh, there were a bunch of condominium buildings that were built here in Denver and some in the suburbs, but a lot of them here in Denver. And after the condo buildings were built, the owners of the buildings would then sue the people who built it because they didn't build it right, or the basement's flooding, or the sprinklers aren't working, or there are some issues with how the building was built. They should have built it better. Is the idea? I don't know if they did or didn't build it right. I'm not in construction, but the thought process is 100%. I think just about every condominium building that was built in the 2000s had a lawsuit associated with it, where as people bought units in the condominium building, they came together, they formed a homeowners association, and the homeowners association said, "We're going to sue the developer." So was it because they poorly developed poorly built the building, or not? I don't know. But when it happened every time and time again, the insurance companies said, we're just not going to insure these condominium buildings, or the insurance requirements would just be so expensive that good luck, trying to build something in Denver. In the state, it's a state law, or a state issue. It's called the condominium defects litigation. And so about 2009, there was a big building that went up, and it was called the Bobolon. It was also just a few blocks from where I live, and um, it was very public. The lawsuit was very public that there were uninhabitable units. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't know if it was just a straw. It was like, kind of more than that. But since then, it's been very difficult to get builders to want to build at least large scale condominium buildings in Denver. There's one that's going up now it's already topped off. Once it's complete, it will be the second largest condominium building in Denver. And it's the developers out of Vancouver. So I guess they've done all the math and they think that the time is right to start building large condominium buildings again in Colorado. But that's the nature of it. And so, in our center city, you want people to buy housing, but there just aren't single family homes. The few that exist in my district are really expensive. And so the way to unlock home ownership in the center city is through condominiums. And if we just don't have condominiums, then just people aren't building wealth through home ownership.
Wow, I did not know that. Like, I've been to Denver, and now I'm starting to think back of like those, like seeing any like huge condo buildings. And yeah, no, I guess I don't have a ton of sample set there. So thank you for sharing. So, like I said, we're gonna take a little bit of a shift. So these are our last chance games. These are so I'm gonna ask you 3 questions at a time. Last chance James comes from improv, so it's like a quick yes and you just say what's the first thing that's on your mind, and then after the third question of the group, I'll circle back. So if you want to explain, if you want to change it, if you want to just edit anything, you'll be able to do so. So I'll read these off in quick succession and just go with what comes to your mind. So the first one is, what policy looks good on paper but is nearly impossible to execute?
Man, so many things. The Mark Ferrandino. Oh, you don't want me to explain right now?
Not yet. So
Okay.
you, like, even if you just say one, when I circle back, you can say like 3 more if you have.
Yeah, I would say license plate reader cameras.
Okay. Now, next one is, what role do you not have on staff that would instantly change outcomes?
I have to communications, having someone help explain the work I'm doing.
Like that. I like that, and I hear that a lot. But I'll hold my commentary too. So, what is a task that you think AI could help you with, and then what is one task that AI could never help you with?
AI can help me craft a draft response to a constituent. AI cannot directly interact with that constituent.
That okay. So we're going back to the policy that's good on paper. That one drummed up a couple things for you, but your answer was license plate photos. Could you elaborate there?
Yeah, so we're having a conversation right now about Flock and Axon. So Flock is they're both companies, and both of them have technology called the ALPR, automated license plate reader cameras. And so we have a bunch of Flock cameras that are set up at major traffic intersections that watch for license plates, also watch for vehicles that meet a particular description. And the idea is if someone stole a car and they go through a major intersection, we'll see that that car is going through that major intersection, and we'll be able to recover someone's stolen car faster. What if someone comes into your house and takes your stuff? Don't you want to hold them accountable? Don't you want your stuff back? And so if we know what vehicle they're driving, and that because they're trying to get away, then that would help us get their stuff back faster. Here's where the devil's in the details, I think, as you said. We have a system of values here in Denver. There are other places that have different systems of values, and those places want us to have their system of values. So in the state of Colorado, we care about women's reproductive rights. State of Texas has a different view. State of Texas was using some of our data in Denver and some of our license plate data to see if there were Texas residents coming to Colorado for abortions. That's not okay. So, because the state of Texas, the way they pass their laws, they don't care where you get your abortion. You cannot do it if you're a Texas. You can't do it in Texas. You can't do it if you're a Texas resident. So another example is we care about the American dream here in Denver, and anyone should be able to come and take advantage of the American dream. Also, if you're fleeing persecution or violence, or if your life is under threat, you should be able to seek a life where you don't have those things. Federal level wants some people out of the country, and those are not the values that we have here in Denver. And so we learned that we have a contract with Flock that's about to expire, and we're not renewing it, where Flock was sharing that information, our Denver cameras data, with ICE and with states. And that is for sure the reason we are not renewing.
Wow. I never quite thought about that. And I'm very surprised. Whether I agree with it or not is a different story. But the fact that the federal government is able to get the data, I'm not as much surprised. But the fact that another state can take state data to use that to enforce other states' laws is very surprising to me. And I can understand why on both of those cases that would be an infringement on what your state and the goals of your state. So that is very scary. Now, shifting to your next question, you said, what do you not have on staff? What person do you not have on staff? And you said communications. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. So the job is basically two things: do the work and tell the people the work you're doing. It's difficult for me to switch between the two. The city of Denver has 14,000 employees. The legislative branch is 60 of those 14,000 employees. So that's including all the 13 elected officials or 13 members of council. All our aides, I have 3, which is actually way more than the state representatives have. They have like 1 or half of one. And then so the mayor has a whole bunch of employees, because the executive branch ultimately reports to the mayor, and he has a whole comms team. I don't know, half a dozen people that work in communications. I don't have anyone that does communications, and so I feel like I'm doing work on behalf of the people of Denver, and I regularly get constituents who say, what are you doing? Why did I vote for you? Or how come you never come to my neighborhood? There's someone reached out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago and said, how come you've never been in my neighborhood? And I said, well, actually, I did 2 events in your neighborhood just last week. Part of the challenge is I figured the people elected me to do the work. But but they need to know that I'm actually doing the work. So letting people know the work I'm doing is a big pain point for me.
Makes a ton of sense, and that dovetails nicely into the AI conversation. You said AI would be good for emails, but not great for in-person connections. You self-explanatory, but if you want to elaborate on that one, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so I think the answer I gave was a little different. I think it was good for drafts,
Mm,
not good for the finished product. Because we're got a computer science degree, so we're playing with AI. I think in some ways it is a way for us to be more efficient when we interact with constituents. We've got zone defense here. We've got 75,000 constituents, and those are voters. Those are people like humans, not Citizen United humans, but actual like real people. But then we've got a whole bunch of businesses in our center city, and they need attention too. So make sure that we have an environment that is conducive to making sure that when you're hungry, there's a restaurant there that will feed you. Or when you're coming to visit and you've come into the convention center, that the convention center is maintained, is owned by the city, and that you're able to stay at a place not too far from the convention centers and in hotels, which are also in District 10. So there, there's a bunch of people reaching out with really legitimate, valid thoughts, concerns, considerations. So if there are 75,000 people and a whole bunch of businesses that are reaching out, and there are three of us, it can help with some of the preparation. AI, at least as far as I'm playing around with it. As far as I can tell, I haven't been able to send any emails just straight AI copy paste, or because it adds stuff that the constituent didn't ask about, or it doesn't have the context that I have, as in my human brain. And maybe at some point it'll have more context, but it doesn't have it now. And so making sure that we provide empathy to a constituent, that's something AI can do. And it's not because I'm not empathetic, it's because I'm responding to a whole bunch of constituent concerns. So if they can help with the empathy, I think that's useful. But I don't want to send an AI response directly. And over the executive branch, they have a chat bot. If you go to the city's website, denvergov.org, the chat bot is not great, and that's all AI. So I care about my brand. I care about the people of District 10 and the businesses and residents in Denver. And so I think it's important that humans actually review it as opposed to just letting AI do its thing.
I can definitely appreciate that. AI, is helpful, but to a point. But at some point, you need that human element. And my last three questions before we close out. These are some fun ones. So this is the time when I get to give you free money. So the first question is, what would you do with an additional $1,000, or excuse me, $100,000 added to the budget? What challenge or task would you tackle? The second question is, what would you do with an additional $1,000,000 added to the budget? What task or challenge? And the third one is, you have unlimited capital, unlimited resources, unlimited capacity, unlimited people, whatever you need for an entire year. What would be the challenge or issue you would tackle then?
So the city of Denver's budget is 4.4 billion a year, including our airport and all the things that the all in. So $1,000, I would probably, we have a park that's going to be undergoing, it's undergoing construction now. I'd probably use those funds for ribbon cutting for that park, whereas we probably won't spend any money for the park otherwise.
For just one, the $1,000, or that was my mistake. It's
100,000.
$100,000. Yeah, 100,000, a million, and then unlimited.
Yeah. So that makes it a little harder to come up with a distinction between 100,000 and a million. But with those two, somewhere in between those two, I would say the majority of things that people reach out to my office about and me about are actually issues that could have been addressed by the executive branch, should have been addressed by the executive branch. Ultimately, we give those concerns back over to the executive branch. So I didn't get my trash picked up, or someone's camping in my alley, or there's someone in need that needs mental health help, or there's crime in my neighborhood. All of those are police chief is a mayoral appointee. The folks who do housing stability are led by a mayoral appointee. It's all in the executive branch. And so with the $1,000, I would probably pilot with $1 million. I would implement an Office of Community Engagement in the executive branch. It is basically the majority of time that I spend interacting with constituents or constituent services. That's actually not one of the job descriptions, one of the job duties that's in our city's constitution. We call it the charter, but constituent services, not in the charter. But that's where I spend the majority of my time. And again, it's almost always something that's really meant for the executive branch. We go to bat for our constituents, and usually what we'll do is opposed to going to the entry, the first line of defense in the executive branch, we'll go to a decision maker so that this person gets additional assistance. Unlimited funds? Oh boy, man, if we had unlimited funds, I would. So, the reason why I'm here is to represent the disability community, but my jam is transportation, making sure that we have access to transportation for everyone, including people with disabilities. If it is accessible, as I said, for someone in a wheelchair and someone with a vision impairment, it's accessible for everyone. So I would create a broad and inviting pedestrian experience in our city, and I'd make sure that we had a protected bike lane network that was complete, that went through our city. Some of them would be on streets that are shared by cars, as in with a barrier between the bike lane and cars, and some of them would be bikes only. So that there, a lot of people come here for the rugged outdoor lifestyle. They come for because they want to exercise, and they're willing to bike, but they don't want to put their life in their hands. And we have this idea of Vision Zero in Denver. It's not actually just a Denver concept. I think it's originally Swedish. But the idea of Vision Zero is that traffic deaths are preventable. It's not just kind of a crazy thing. Someone, was a human for a moment and took their eye off the road and there was a crash, and that's just the way it is. We can prevent deaths by changing policy or by changing urban design. And so let's have a policy that we change the urban design so that people can get around our city safely, no matter how they choose to get there. And if we did have safe, broad and inviting pedestrian experience and safe, protected bike lanes, I believe a whole lot more people would be willing to ride their bike to work, or ride their bike to their grocery store, or take a wagon to the grocery store instead of driving. And so it would be better for community, because then people will talk to one another. It's hard to do that when you're in a car with a closed window and your neighbor's in a car with a closed window. But if you're on a bike at a stoplight and someone else is a bike at a stoplight, you can say hi and break bread and form community. So there's so many benefits to get people out of cars. So if I had an unlimited amount of money, that's what I do.
I love that, Chris. That just kind of brings everything full circle, from transportation to people being safe in vehicles, to bringing everybody together so that they can communicate, understand each other, and make for a more vibrant community. So on behalf of everybody here at Jentry, I'd just like to say thank you, Chris. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your story, and your journey is nothing short of inspiring for many different communities. So thank you. And then on behalf of the viewers, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. Again, this is the Jentry Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mason, and I was joined today by Chris Hinds, who is one of the Denver council members representing District 10, the Perfect 10. And for everybody here, we'd like to say thank you and have a great day.